What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here at Korea. Today's Wednesday, March 23rd. I think we'll just get right into it. What's already been the craziest NFL offseason that I can remember and probably ever just became even crazier today. This morning, there was a report that came kind of out of nowhere this morning that Tyreek Hill, I guess Tyreek Hill was wanted his extension, and the Chiefs couldn't afford to give it to him. And so there was a rumor, or not a rumor, like a report this morning that the Dolphins and Jets were both in on Tyreek Hill. And about an hour after that report is when the trade became official to Miami. So Miami is trading five picks in total, including their late first round this year that they got from the 49ers when they traded up for Trey Lance in the draft last year. So it's five picks. And then Miami gave Tyreek Hill a 4-year, $120 million extension. So Tyreek got paid. We're kind of seeing this is the second time that a receiver that we'll get into next with Devonta Adams, but both of them, the quarterbacks had big contracts, and so the star receiver wanted to get paid, and the team couldn't afford to do it, and so now they're on a new team. So Korea, what was your kind of reaction when you first heard this news?
I thought it was some kind of prank. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I woke up this morning and I just scroll down on my phone. I see Bleacher Report posted something, and I'm like, okay, let's see what it is. And it says Dolphins, and like it's like red alert. So I'm like, obviously this is something big. I'm like, I see Dolphins interested in Tyreek Hill, and I'm like, Dolphins and Jets, and I'm like, huh? Like, I thought the Chiefs were just going to bring him back. I thought they were going to work around that deal because obviously Tyreek Hill wanted his money off his coming off season. I thought the Chiefs were just going to automatically, already, I if not already have started, but, are still in the process of trying to sign him. But lo and behold, it just looks like Tyreek just wasn't going to get his money in Kansas City. So he said elsewhere. And it seems like the Jets and Dolphins literally just offered the same exact trade, and the Chiefs accepted both of them essentially, but they let Tyreek choose where he wanted to go play, and he wanted to go play in Miami. So this is pretty much a blockbuster. I'm kind of confused as to why Tyreek is going to like these two teams where their quarterback situation is not the greatest. Obviously, Tua down in Miami, there's been so many questions of him, but his offense is getting more stacked by the minute. They already have Jalen Waddle. They bring in Tyreek. They franchise tag Gesicki. We already talked about Chase Edmonds being down there as well in that system behind Myles Gaskin and Ahmed, the UW boys. Tua's just getting all the help around him. They also brought in Jacoby Brissett as a backup. So I mean, I guess he just wanted to go down to Miami, but I was shocked. But in the end, I'm not really too surprised that that Tyreek wanted his money. Then again, apparently there were like obviously some little hints on Twitter talking about how he was saying thank you Chiefs Kingdom, and he was basically kind of saying he was already mentally checked out of Kansas City. But I thought it was just trying to get a deal. But obviously the organization and Tyreek were just not on similar paths. Obviously I would do the same thing. They chose Mahomes over Hill, and obviously Mahomes is pretty much the franchise quarterback in the league right now, getting half $1 billion in his contract. So for Tyreek, this is going to be interesting. He's definitely going to be that number one receiver in Miami now. And then Jalen Waddle as the two, but it'll be interesting to see how they use him, considering Tua and Jalen obviously have that Alabama connection, and then Tyreek Hill, just the threat that he is on the offensive side of the ball. That'll be interesting. And obviously on the Chiefs side, obviously the signing that we didn't mention, but we might as well bring it up now. Juju Smith-Schuster now with the Chiefs, so he's probably going to be that number one receiver now, unless the Chiefs obviously are still looking to bring in another big receiver probably before the draft. Obviously, one big name that's still available is Julio Jones, obviously after being released by Tennessee. He's still available, so we could see maybe Patrick Mahomes run the ball to Julio Jones and Juju Smith-Schuster after what seems to be crazy because Patrick Mahomes, it was just the trio in Kansas City. Like, so we forget Travis Kelce's still there, but it was always Patrick, Tyreek, and Travis. But now it's going to be like Patrick, Juju, maybe another big receiver like Julio, and then Travis, or Travis being number one. So This was surprising to me. I didn't really expect Tyreek Hill to be traded this early. I thought the Chiefs were going to work a deal with him, but I guess not. But it'll be interesting to see how the Miami uses him. Obviously, Mike McDaniel literally has a bunch of weapons on that offense now, so he will use probably a lot of that West Coast style, bring Miami, in contention for maybe the second spot in the AFC East. But craziness. Another crazy trade in the offseason.
Yeah, so I guess kind of taking a look at both offenses, you kind of mentioned a little bit. So I guess Miami, they also signed Raheem Mostert to a one-year deal. So you talk about speed with Mostert, Waddle, and Hill, that trio. But yeah, I don't think that this helps Waddle from a fantasy standpoint. I've seen conflicting stances on, Tyreek's going to help open up the field for him, blah, 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 blah. But Waddle was in the slot. He wasn't getting doubled to begin with last year. And Waddle was more of kind of a volume receiver. And that volume is going to be dropped at least a bit with Tyreek Hill coming to Miami and taking his, target share. So, I guess looking at it from a fantasy perspective, I don't think it helps Tyreek Hill or Waddle. Obviously, Tua is a big winner in all of this, getting a weapon like Tyreek. But yeah, obviously, I think, Mike McDaniel's trying to run a similar offense that he was with in San Francisco. Mentioned the West Coast and all that. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a messy situation from a fantasy perspective in Miami. But, from a real life standpoint, obviously, is what they're focused on, Dolphins. And so, yeah, this offense can definitely be really good. And then, the Chiefs, Kelsey is the technical wide receiver one, obviously the tight end, but he'll be the number one target still. And then, I think Juju sees a big upgrade, obviously. He should be the wide receiver one outside of Kelsey. And then I think at this point, I think they're going to try to draft a receiver potentially with that pick they got from Miami with the late first. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, for now, Kelsey already was a top 1-2 tight end, so his value can't really change much. But yeah, I think Juju goes from a wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 2 for the time being. But again, depending on what wide receiver they draft, assuming that they do draft a receiver, if they sign a free agent like Julio, obviously that can still change. But we'll talk about that obviously as it comes around. But so we'll go on to another big receiver moving teams. Devonta Adams is the same situation with, I guess, Rodgers getting his money and the Packers not being able to pay Adams what he wanted, basically, in terms of his new contract. Adams reunites with Derek Carr. They put together a Fresno State in college. And so it seems like Adam, I heard he bought a new home in Vegas too. So it seems like Adam's happy with the Raiders. And obviously the AFC West keeps making huge moves. And now maybe the Chiefs are now the Chiefs are the bottom of the division now on paper, you'd think, with all of that. So what was your thoughts on this move, Korea?
Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I think the AFC West is, in the news every 3 to 5 business days at this point. First, obviously, last Thursday, we found out Devonta Adams is being traded to the Raiders, and Green Bay got some picks in return. And it was kind of interesting to me at the beginning because as soon as I saw this trade, I was just thinking, didn't Aaron Rodgers just sign that big fat contract to stay with you? But at the same time, I knew Devonta wanted to get paid as well. And I guess in Green Bay, it was either Aaron Rodgers or Devonta Adams. Like, which one are you going to keep? And they wanted to keep Aaron Rodgers, and he's that bad man, and they didn't want to go with Jordan Love. So they shipped off Devonta Adams to the Raiders. Obviously, I kind of knew this was a speculation this offseason. A lot of people were thinking that Devonta was just going to sign with the Raiders as being a free agent. But obviously, Packers used the tag on him. But then after the Packers used the tag, Devonta Adams said he's not going to play for them until he gets money, basically doing a Le'Veon Bell holdout or Zeke. But Packers said, no, we'll just ship you off to where you want to go. So now, you mentioned he just bought the house in Vegas. He reunites with his college quarterback when they played at Fresno State. This is going to be interesting. Obviously, we already mentioned the AFC West, just always in the news. Tyreek Hill now leaving the division. He's obviously a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, and we have a top 5 entering the division now with Devonta Adams. So it's just crazy. I mean, when you really think about it, just how the AFC has just been so many moves, and there's one more we're going to get into in a little bit, but just the I knew this was going to happen. I just thought Devonta Adams was going to sign with the Raiders just because I thought the Packers were going to let him walk, but obviously they wanted some value for him, and I guess they got that value. But obviously the bigger question is, what is Aaron Rodgers going to do now? Obviously the Packers are probably going to look toward free agency, and obviously there's one name that I kind of like over there. His name is OBJ. But the thing is, the Packers have no money to pay him, and he wants a lot of money. So I don't know if the Packers are going to be looking toward OBJ's direction. But other than that, they have to find a number one receiver, because what I have right now is Lazard and just, all of the backup guys behind Devonta Adams. And now you lose that number one receiver. So it's like, what do you do now if you're the Packers? So this trade, I'm glad the Packers, got some value for it, but at the same time, now I was just kind of questioning, okay, what now you kept your quarterback, but you traded your wide receiver. Now you got to build around the quarterback. They still have, that running back. I believe Dylan is still there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in that backfield. So it's just now figuring out who to supply Aaron Rodgers with weapons on the receiving end, which is what he does best.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard a report that Rodgers, when he signed the big contract, he kind of knew Adams was going to be gone because they couldn't pay them both. And so, originally I thought the same, like, oh, why would Rodgers sign, if he knew Adams was going to, or if Adams was going to walk, but it sounded like he knew that was going to happen. So it didn't like it was a surprise to Rodgers with that trade, and that kind of tells you what he cares more about between money and having his best wide receiver. But that's a story for another day, But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Odell, but the problem is that he tore his ACL so late in the Super Bowl that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. So I don't think he really helps him that much. So yeah, like Kansas City, I think that they're going to look to the draft because, I mean, other than like Julio, and at this point of his career, how much does he have left, in the tank? So I think at this point, both Kansas City and Green Bay are going to look to the draft. There's obviously a bunch of huge names in the draft to look at. I think that will be their route to go. And yeah, now the Raiders with Renfro, Waller, and Adams, kind of a scary trio in that regard, with Jacobs out of the backfield. So I think, now or never for Derek Carr. He's always kind of been solid. They made the playoffs last year and lost that close game to the Bengals. But yeah, now you get a true wide receiver one in Adams to go along with Renfro and Waller, and it'll be interesting to see how everything pans out. And now we'll get to the other blockbuster move, which was DeShawn Watson to Cleveland. It seemed like it was between, I think it was Atlanta and New Orleans was the rumors that it was down to, and then Cleveland comes out of nowhere. And lands Watson, another huge contract, with draft capital going the way of Houston. Korea, what was your takeaway from this move?
I'm sorry. I gotta say, I feel so sorry for Atlanta, man. They blew another big lead. They had a 28-3 lead over Cleveland right now. They were about to trade for DeShawn. It looked like DeShawn. There were so many reports about DeShawn going to Atlanta. Everyone in Atlanta was hyped. I was like, okay, just Tom Brady and DeShawn Watson in the same division. That's going to be interesting to see. Oh, no, he's going north. And he's going to the Cleveland Browns. And the only released his trade clause for the Browns. And I was shocked. But then again, I saw that contract he got after he signed, and 5 years, $230 million, all the guaranteed. And mind you, he's still having these pending civil lawsuits right here. So even if he is, found, obviously if he's suspended for the week, he's still making base mil $1 million if he's suspended. So it looks like the Cleveland Browns are really gambling right now. I don't know if it's the right gamble, but at the same time, I mean, if DeShawn Watson is cleared of all his civil lawsuits right now, and acquitted and all that, again, all 22 of them, then obviously Deshaun Watson is looking like the franchise, and obviously it's looking like Cleveland is making the right move because they already have guys like OBJ and Jadeveon Clowney and Jarvis Landry already wanting to come back to Cleveland to obviously now play with Deshaun Watson. Obviously Jadeveon Clowney because that Deshaun Watson, they used to play together in Houston. So that'll be interesting to see. So in terms of Houston, they got a lot of picks out of it. I'm not surprised. That's pretty much what Deshaun's asking price really was, and what Houston's asking price for Deshaun Watson really was. But it's just a gamble because, obviously all these pending civil lawsuits, we don't know what's going to happen until we find out. Obviously, he was found. I think the first one was like not guilty, right? But he has all these other civil suits, all 22 of them. So we still have to figure that out. But in terms of Cleveland, it looks like they're going all in. There were already reports about DeShawn maybe going to Cleveland in a slot for like Baker Mayfield, but obviously Baker, that was a whole nother scandal with Baker wanting to be traded, but then Cleveland not trading him, and then kind of Cleveland and Baker had to be stuck together, and then obviously Cleveland goes behind Baker's back and trades for Deshaun Watson, and now Baker's in the trade market, and he's probably, I've heard he's linked to teams like Seattle and Carolina, but I think Carolina's out of that race now too. So Cleveland right now, they're going in for the gamble, obviously, with Deshaun Watson. I think they still have Case Keenum as the backup, but for now, this is a big gamble for Cleveland. But if it pays out, you're getting an all-elite quarterback in Deshaun Watson to play for the dog pound. He seemed like he's very interested in playing for Cleveland, obviously, in his post after the trade happened. So, obviously Deshaun wanted out of Houston. He got out of Houston. Now it's just waiting for these lawsuits.
Yeah, I mean, what an offseason it's been for Cleveland. First trading for Amari Cooper, and then now Watson. You mentioned poor Jarvis Landry. The offseason he gets released, they also bring him Watson. So it sounds like he might end up back in Cleveland now. And I saw Odell linked to them as well. So obviously, this addition, moving from Baker to Watson, makes them way more appealing of a destination for free agents, and we're already seeing that in these rumors. Now that leaves Baker looking for a trade, and outside of I heard the Panthers and him were like it was like disinterest, so they weren't interested in each other, so they're out. So and then we'll get into Jimmy Garoppolo too, who's like trying to get traded, who the 49ers are trying to trade. So it's like both Garoppolo and Baker, and obviously Garoppolo's not going to Seattle. So it sounds like, other than Seattle, I don't really there's not really a team that's looking to trade for a quarterback that I can think of, because I think the Panthers are going to look to the draft. I don't think that they're going to make a trade for a Baker or a Garoppolo. There's not much else to a market other than potentially Seattle. So we'll see how this all plays out. I'm sure they'll get traded eventually, or at least Baker will. And it sounds like Seattle's a very strong possibility. We'll keep tabs on that. So now we'll get into some other moves. So we had Matt Ryan get traded to the Colts, who were originally a strong suitor for Garoppolo. And then 2 hours later, the Falcons signed Marcus Mariota. So we had that go down. It sounded like the Colts were the strongest for Garoppolo, or potentially Gardner Minshew, I heard, as well. And so now, and I heard that because Garoppolo underwent shoulder surgery, that's why the Colts were out on him. And so it sounds like the 49ers are going to be stuck with Garoppolo, and it's $25 million unless they release him, which I haven't really heard too much about. But I really want to see Trey Lance start for the 49ers, but it's sounding like that's a little bit less likely now compared to, say, a month or two ago. Korea, what's your output on all of that?
Yeah, first with Matt Ryan. That one came out of the blue for me a little bit. I thought after they lost to the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, I thought they were just going to stick with Ryan, obviously, because it seemed like Atlanta wanted to mend the relationship with Matt Ryan after trying to chase Deshaun Watson. But it looks like Matt Ryan was just either something was going on between the organization and the team. But now Matt Ryan, who has never played for another team, is now being sent to Indy and is now rocking the blue and white. What pick did Atlanta get again? It was a third, I believe.
It was like kind of close to a middle round pick.
Yeah, so something light. But now Indy has found their new QB. But it's kind of interesting. After the Colts were looking into the Jimmy G sweepstakes. Now settling with Matt Ryan, and now you have obviously Marcus Mariota. Not even 2 hours later, the Falcons find their new quarterback, Marcus Mariota. So it looked like Matt Ryan just wanted to get out of there, obviously, with all the I guess the moving of the organization in a new direction. So Matt Ryan, a new team. It'll be interesting. I don't know what this does for the Colts. Obviously, you're just putting in you're putting in a pretty okay quarterback who has put up decent numbers. Obviously, back in his 2016 season, people were saying he was an MVP. Obviously, Matty Ice says everyone knows him, but now he's in a new system. Obviously, he has a better O line. Obviously, Colts one of the best O lines in the country. He has Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, and he has some weapons. Obviously, with Michael Pittman Jr. And all of Indy's receiving core as well. And then for Marcus Mariota, this is kind of his breakout. I kind of have been claiming for him to be a starter because obviously, Tennessee, he was a starter for Tennessee ever since he got drafted, but then they went in a different direction and they got Tannehill, and so he's been just bouncing around as the backup for Derek Carr for the past couple seasons, but now he finally is getting his time as a starting quarterback again. I believe he's still a pretty decent quarterback. He looks great when he comes in for some of the plays last season for Las Vegas. So definitely want to see some good Marcus Mariota down at ATL. It's going to be interesting to see. Now he reunites with his old offensive coordinator out of Tennessee. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, and then you mentioned Jimmy G debacle in San Fran. I don't know what San Fran's going to be doing now. Like you mentioned it back a month ago or like a couple months ago, it was always about Jimmy G leaving San Fran and going to a championship team maybe or like a contender. Obviously, people were linking him to Tampa Bay, but then Tom Brady came back, and then they were linking to Colts, and then they traded for Matt Ryan because of his shoulder surgery. So if the Niners are still looking toward Jimmy G, I think they're making the wrong decision. But as someone who is a 49ers hater, I'm not disappointed. I am clearly happy. I say encourage that as well, because I see better potential in Trey Lance as well, as you and some of my other friends that are Niner fans have told me that they see better potential in Trey Lance over Jimmy G. So for the Niners, I don't know what they're going to do now. Obviously, the trade market for quarterbacks the QB carousel is kind of closing up now, with Carolina now just looking toward the draft, and Seattle, for some reason, interested in Baker Mayfield. And yeah, it's kind of closing the carousel. So Niners, I mean, they're in a tricky position, but Colts, I don't really see that much success for them with Matty Ice. I can see, maybe like a 10-7, 9-8 record. Obviously, Matt Ryan led that team to like 7-10 last season with the Falcons, but this year I can see like a 10-7 with the Colts. Better offensive line, similar offense maybe, and then for Marcus Mariota, it kind of just depends on all the assets he really has, because obviously no Calvin Ridley down there anymore. He has Kyle Pitts, but other than that, he also has Cordell Patterson, who just re-signed. So it'll be interesting to see these new quarterbacks and new teams. The most I'm kind of excited to see is definitely Marcus Mariota in an Atlanta Falcons jersey.
Yeah, and they also lost Russell Gage to Tampa Bay, so they really don't have many weapons. So another team that will probably look to the draft to grab a receiver or two in that regard. So now we'll move on to Allen Robinson finally getting a capable quarterback, signing with the Los Angeles Rams, which then led to the Rams trading Robert Woods to the Titans. Titans also signed Austin Hooper. So a lot of movement there after pretty much his whole career. Robinson playing, with subpar quarter play, he'll find this would be by far his best situation of his career. Playing alongside Cooper Kupp with Matthew Stafford there. And then Robert Woods coming off the ACL tear. Is going to be the wide receiver 2 now in Tennessee. I know he's kind of always been praised for his blocking, and so I'm sure he'll be used a lot as a blocker, and with that run game there in Tennessee. And then Austin Hooper should be the starting tight end for the Titans with, I think, his last year's Ferkser was their starting tight end, I believe. So I think that would be a slight upgrade in that regard too. Korea, what's your takeaway from all of it, from these moves?
Yeah, first, Allen Robinson moving to the NFC West, being a Ram. Obviously, he was very disgruntled after being with Chicago. Obviously, that lack of offense in Chicago with Matt Nagy, that was just very frustrating for the Bears. So he obviously has been wanting to move on for like the past couple seasons, and now he's entered this passing offense, and now it's like night and day for Allen Robinson. Now he's in the offense led by Matthew Stafford, loves to run the ball. Obviously, we have top 5 wide receiver in Cooper Kupp down there, and then obviously the loss of Robert Woods. I'm going to get into that a little bit, but obviously with Allen Robinson now being kind of the wide receiver 2, with OBJ probably not returning to the Rams. So it looks like that's a great 1-2 combo down there. Obviously, they still have Van Jefferson and a bunch of backups in Los Angeles, but then obviously trading Robert Woods to Tennessee. I thought I was a little bit of a surprise, but at the same time, I kind of knew they wanted to move on from Robert Woods, considering they brought in OBJ and then they won the Super Bowl, and then OBJ is probably going to go somewhere else, and so they needed that receiver too. And I thought they were going to run it back with Woods, but obviously they moved on since they grabbed Allen Robinson in free agency. But for Robert Woods, obviously you mentioned he's very more of a blocking receiver, and when you're in Tennessee, you're blocking. You have a running back named Derrick Henry, who's pretty much the best running back in the NFL. Yeah, he's going to fit well. Obviously, you mentioned Austin Hooper joining that team. Obviously, Tennessee has the pieces, but one of the bigger questions is just Tannehill's play. Obviously, he's been very inconsistent, especially last season. So it'll be interesting to see now with Julio gone and Robert Woods in to see how Tannehill does in that system. But yeah, I like the moves all around. I'd say pretty much Allen Robinson going into the Rams was pretty much like a dream destination for him for sure.
Yeah, so now that we're a few days into free agency, we're starting to see it kind of slow down a bit. I listed some of the top. So we have Stephen Gilmore still available, Bobby Wagner, Tyrann Mathieu, Akeem Hicks. We mentioned Odell Beckham. There's still Melvin Gordon still available, Eric Fisher. There's still definitely some key names that are still available. So we'll keep tabs on that. I assume they should sign before NFL draft, I would think, over the next month or so, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. So now we'll get into the latest in the MLB. Opening day is 2 weeks from tomorrow, so we're almost there. We're about a week into spring training now, so players are getting warmed up and whatnot. There are some rule changes that were announced, I think, yesterday on Tuesday, that they're expanding the rosters from 26 to 28 from April 7th to May 1st because of the lockout and the shortened spring training and all of that. I guess for this season, they're keeping the runner on second during extra innings, I guess, to keep games shorter. I guess I don't really like that personally, but I mean, it makes sense. And then they're having what many are calling the Shohei Ohtani rule, where they're letting pitchers remain in the lineup after being replaced on the mound. Obviously, it really only applies to Ohtani right now. So that's big. I guess Ohtani's listed as a DH in those days when he's pitching. Korea, do you have anything to say about those rule changes?
Yeah, obviously I'm not a fan of the ghost runner rule as well, but obviously with the shortened season, not shortened season, but obviously with all the double headers that we have, obviously using those ghost runners is going to speed up the game. So it sucks, but obviously we kind of have to do it with the lockout. Obviously the Shohei Ohtani rule obviously is probably only going to apply to Shohei Ohtani right now, unless the next Shohei Ohtani comes to the MLB soon. So yeah, but obviously that's fun. But yeah, it's just some last minute solutions. Obviously, extending free agency, that's a big one. Obviously, with the lockout and team, but it looks like some players are finding new teams right now. Obviously, we're gonna get right into that. Ari, what are your thoughts on the first one? Let's go right into it. Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman is now a Los Angeles Dodger. Obviously, that big mega deal he signed. What was it? 6 years, I believe, something around 200 something million. Just a big fat contract. Now being a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yeah, honestly, my thoughts on this. I kind of knew Freddie Freeman was just going to go to LA. I didn't know he was going to be paid that much. Obviously, Freddie Freeman was pretty much not really kicked out, but Atlanta was already trying to move on from Freddie Freeman. with bringing Matt Olson in, as we talked about before. So it just looks like Freddie Freeman, is going to is entering one of the best, if not the best, lineup in baseball. Are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the Dodgers lineup, it's like an all-star team basically in of itself with Mookie Betts, Freeman, Trey Turner, Muncy, Bellinger, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock. Like it's pretty insane on paper. We'll see, how it pans out. But yeah, like you said, once they traded for Matt Olson, you kind of knew Freddie Freeman was gonna be gone, and there were a few teams. I think the Yankees were on him until they stuck with Rizzo. The Red Sox were in on him. I think the Cubs. I believe I saw a report, but obviously the Dodgers with their market were going to be able to pay him the most, and so that's what it came down to. So yeah, we'll see how it's going to be weird. I mean, we saw him in a Dodgers uniform. I think it was the other day on Tuesday when he made his debut. But yeah, it'll be kind of a little bit weird, I think, at first to not seeing him in a Braves uniform, but we'll get used to it like we do with every other move. Oakland continued their destruction of their team, their rebuild, moving Matt Chapman to Toronto. And now I just saw Ken Rosenthal said that teams are in discussion with them about trading for Sean Manaea, and they're waiting to see how to proceed with Frankie Montas, who they're also looking to trade. So it sounds like that will continue. So Chapman to Toronto, and then Jorge Soler to Miami was another big move recently. And then we have just a bunch of other arbitration, kind of smaller one-year deals that are happening. Corey, was there any kind of move or one or two moves that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, obviously another one is Carlos Correa going to Minnesota. That one is really big in my sense on the fact that Carlos Correa has now left the AL West, and that was pretty much one of the key things Houston was trying to cling on to. Was trying to bring Carlos Correa back. Honestly, I thought he was going to go to like New York or like the Yankees, or he was linked to other teams. But like he was even linked to the Tigers at one point, but he's decided to go to the Minnesota Twins. Obviously, the Minnesota Twins with Urshela, and they're kind of building that infield now with Correa as well. So it'll be interesting. They have Gary Sanchez behind the plate as well. So now it kind of clears up the AL West a little bit. Obviously, the Mariners have a little bit of a better path with Carlos Correa now leaving that division, and Houston, not looking as dominant as they used to be, but still, up there. You mentioned Soler to Miami. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know what Miami, they've always kind of been, kind of around bottom of the NL East pretty much for every year. They had that 1 year where they made the playoffs back in the shortened season when almost every team made the playoffs essentially. You mentioned Soler. Other than that, you mentioned Freeman. We talked about Correa.
Chris Bryant's another one that we haven't touched on yet to Colorado.
Yeah, that one was a little shocking. I was surprised to see Colorado pay him that much. I was confused as well because I knew Colorado was interested in him, but it seemed like obviously they seemed like the organization's confused. Obviously, with the whole Nolan Arenado situation, taking in that money to trade him to St. Louis, but then paying all this money for Chris Bryant. I don't understand.
They're not willing to pay Trevor Story either, so it's like they
Speaking of Trevor Story, that one's sorry to interrupt you. That's another one. Trevor Story goes to Boston. That one was as of yesterday. He signs what was it? I forgot what his deal is, but now he's with Boston Red Sox.
A big deal.
Yeah, it's not that big deal. That's right. I knew it was a big deal. I've just seen so many deals recently. It's been crazy. That's another big move. But yeah, we mentioned it. They're willing to pay Chris Bryant all this money, who is not the youngest, but still pretty good in his prime. But versus Trevor Story, who's an elite shortstop, who you could build the franchise around. But he obviously signs with Boston. So I didn't really get the whole Chris Bryant signing for the Colorado Rockies. Obviously, as us Mariner fans, we were a little depressed to see that Chris Bryant was going there. But obviously, we kind of knew that we were going to get Chris Bryant after we traded for Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker. So, I was kind of confused to see him get all that money from Colorado, assuming that they weren't even doing that for Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, it's like there's been signs where Colorado's kind of where we think they're going to go into a rebuild, trading Arenado, not willing to pay Trevor Story, and then they make this move. So it's, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see Chris Bryant hit, and that altitude and Coors Field, and how many home runs he can hit. In that ballpark that's kind of known for, long balls, home runs. So that's kind of what I have. Was there anything else that you want to touch on today, Korea?
Nothing. I mean, other than the little thing about Oakland, you mentioned how Oakland is kind of in a rebuild. They're pretty much just cleaning house right now. We always talk about Olsen being traded for all those picks and not picks, all those prospects. Same for Matt Chapman going to Toronto for all those prospects, and that's probably going to be the same thing for Manaea and Montes. Obviously, I've seen a lot of teams linked with Manaea, like the Yankees. Hopefully, Seattle can get him. But other than that, obviously, we will be back on Friday. We will bring you the pretty much first 6 weeks Sweet 16 matchups on Thursday. We'll give you our reaction to those and look forward to Friday's matchups, and then we'll see how we do in the Elite Eight. We'll also see what's going on with NFL free agency as we get closer to the draft. Obviously, nobody's safe when we see Tyreek Hill all of a sudden be traded. And then obviously, as we get closer and closer to opening day, we still have a few free agents that still need to sign some deals, but the number is dwindling as we get closer to opening day.
Yep, no doubt. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you all in the next episode on